Hello, my name's Robin Vincent and welcome to Modular. Today we're looking at the Maestro from Acid Rain Technology. The Maestro is a strange looking module because it has no knobs. It's a button based interface, and what it gives you is 6 channels of LFOs. Now I know that doesn't sound too exciting. I've got LFOs over here in my Batumi, I've got LFOs over here in my 3PT, I've got LFOs over here in my DivKid Oct. So am I really low on LFOs? Not particularly, but the Maestro does something which is really quite clever, something I haven't seen before, and is a lot of fun to play with. So those factors alone make it worthwhile having a bit of a poke around. So the Maestro's superpowers lie in its clockableness, its mutableness, and its chainableness. What does that mean? Well, everything is clocked. That means it will always keep in time with what you're doing. It's not a free-flowing LFO, the sort of one which just yawns on and yawns back or wobbles about all by itself. Now, this is tied to your tempo. Of course, it can be tied to its own tempo, but it gets really interesting because everything it does keeps time with what you're doing. The other remarkable thing is that it can be muted. Now, this doesn't sound too exciting either, but I promise you it is. The ability to bypass modulation is something that doesn't happen a lot. You've got to set up a whole number of modules to route things into, to turn things off and to turn things back on again, rather than having everything just running all the while. This has mute buttons. I can just mute an LFO, so it's no longer LFOing. I'll show you that in a minute. And the other interesting thing it can do is it can chain up LFOs. So you could have a very slow thing suddenly bursting into a very fast thing, bursting into a different thing, all in a looped chain. And that can generate some really interesting variations and developments to your sequence. And all of these things can be saved and loaded on the fly and changed and switched and programmed as you go. So while its feature set is somewhat simple, it actually brings a lot of change to your system. You end up doing modulation in a way you hadn't perhaps thought of before. It ends up being more complex, more movable, less rigid, while at the same time being tied to this tempo. So it's kind of more rigid but less rigid, and yet more creative and complex while being simple. I think perhaps I'd better just show you what I mean. So let's keep things really simple to start with. You're looking down from above. This is your interface. As I say, it's a buttony interface, not a knob-based interface. I'm dying to twist something, but there's nothing there to twist. I'm taking a clock in from my sequencer over here, but that's not important just at the moment. And here are your 6 channels of LFO, 6 outputs. You've also got some trigger inputs, which we'll use at some point. But let's show you the basics. So I've got just an oscillator going through a filter. Let's take a triangle wave. And throw that in. So there you go, you can see it wobbling about here, and it's going straight to the cutoff, and it's moving that about over on the Joe filter over here. Now this is just channel 1, and I've got various ones I can choose from. I can choose a square one, random, slope up, slope down, and then triangle and inverted. Now at the moment it's keeping pace with the clock, and I've got this clock option here where I can slow it down and speed it up. They also have a smooth option in order to make it more like a sine wave. add in a triplet, so it's not quite keeping time quite in the same way. It's now moved itself off and doing 3 for every 2 or 1 or something. Now every time I hold down one of the channel buttons, it tells me what is currently selected. So I've got this particular triangle wave, I've got it smooth, and I've got it at quarter speed. So there's a smooth random. Turn it back to stepped. Speed it up a bit. Remember I said about muting? That's just brilliant. That right there, okay, is something which is immediately awesome. I can just turn it off. I mean, is that crazy? Is that nuts? How else would I be doing that? If I had an LFO coming in to that and I wanted to turn it off, I'd have to pull the plug. Or I'd have to route it through something which has a mute button or an off button or a rerouting button, you know. Whereas now, I can just turn it on and then turn it off. You know, I could then move it to something else and then stick that in. It's just brilliant. Brilliant. That's one LFO. I'm just using different LFOs and different timings very simply, very easily. Oh yeah, the timing. Let me show you that bit again. So it's in time, yeah, with my sequence. If I speed my sequence up, because it's clocked, it stays with it. Now, of course, you can clock other LFOs. That's not an unusual thing. It's just a feature that I happen to like. And that becomes more interesting in a minute. Oh yeah, the other thing is it can be bipolar. So at the moment it's only unipolar. It's only sticking its head up and coming back down again. It's not going the full range. So if I stick on bipolar, it's now going twice as far. Of course, that's going to depend on what attenuation you're doing to that signal as well. I mean, one of the things it doesn't have, which is it's probably its only flaw that I can find, is it has no attenuation within it. So it's coming out either unipolar, so 0 to 5, or bipolar, -5 to +5. So those are your two choices as far as the amount of wang it's going to be doing when it comes out. But like something with the Jove, it has an attenuverter on the CV input, so I can calm it down there. Otherwise, you can stick it into a trim or some other attenuator in order to bring that amplitude down if that's what you want. Keeping it in simple mode, I'm going to show you the chaining. Now the chaining is where you stick waveforms one after each other so that you get a chain of LFOs. Rather than just doing the same thing, it changes. And this is totally brilliant. Let's bring our thing back in. And let's think up a chain, right? It doesn't have to be clever. So I press the chain button. I'm then going to give it a couple of those, a random or two, and a wobbly. Finish with a square. Let's turn it on. But you can also put timings in there. If I hit chain again, let's do a couple of those, but then let's go for some seriously fast ones of those, slow random a couple of times, and then a couple of fast ones of those. Or let's just mess around with the timing. So we'll start off with a simple one of those. We'll then stick in a couple of those, and a bunch of those. One other feature it has is this low or high feature. So rather than having a wobbly thing going on, it can just either be high or low. That essentially means you can have something not happening and then happening. So if I chain, do a couple of lows, and then a couple of those, just very simple. So now I've got nothing, and then I've got a couple coming in. That's really nice. Let's do that again. A couple of lows. A couple of those. Couple of lows. And then let's do 1, 2, 3, 4 of those. As I say, it's all tempo synced. I can play with this chain thing all day. Let's put some highs in. Highs, then a couple of those, a couple of lows, 2, 3, 4 of those, and see how that sounds. And of course you've got 6. You've got 6 of these things. So we'll take number 2 out. I'm going to stick that into the pulse width. I can turn them off. And you can also sort of do things around the other way. So I can hold, for instance, sine wave and press 1, 2, 3 and 4, and it works on all of them. So either, you know, what you're holding can be directed to each LFO, or the timing. Or you can hold the channel and choose what you want it to be. Let's have a quick look at swapping between chains and settings. It has the ability to save to this little SD card here. So if I start off with a chain of a bit of random, a bit of that, and a couple of those, I can save that into one of the 14 slots. Then I can do another one. Let's go for low, slow. Let's try something more interesting than that. Let's try low, random, and one of those, or two. Save that into slot number 2. And in the middle of your set, you can have that running, hit load the next one. Load the next one in. Load the other one in. Are you getting it? Are you getting it? I mean, it's just fun. It's so much fun. Can't quite believe how much fun that is. I mean, it's nothing that I ever really consider that often. I generally speaking just stick an LFO into something and let it move. That tends to be how I approach modulation in a very simple, straightforward way. But with this fella, I'm suddenly got a whole new place to think about, a whole new way of thinking how am I going to make some interesting sounds, and then how am I going to change those? And it gives me that opportunity to change, to move, to morph, to travel from doing one thing to another. I mean, I can do that by like unplugging the Batumi, plugging it into another thing. And that can produce those sorts of results. But with this, I can have all of those thoughts and ideas saved onto the SD card and just load it up when I need them. So not only can I mute channels, turn things on and off, I can turn things on and off and change it with just a touch of a button. That's pretty awesome. Now we're not done yet. There's another feature, I think, which is the triggering. This is slightly weird, slightly interesting, but still good fun, So what this is it uses a gate or a trigger from somewhere else to fire a single cycle of the LFO. So I can take the gate output from my sequence, put that into the trigger input, and see what that does. So each time the gate is firing, it's firing a little bit of a slope. If I was to speed that up, you'd get it a bit more. Or if I was to bring this down a bit, so every time the gate is firing, it's firing a single cycle of the sine wave. Now I could set this up to do something else, to rather respond to a different trigger. So if I just go to my mod setup and set it to triggers, pretty nice. Obviously you could use that rather than using it on the filter. I could use that on the note itself. So if I go back to the gate, so that's the basics, that's the general thing what it does. 6 channels of that, all running completely independently but tied to that same clock with the same functionality, the same ability to load, save stuff, same ability to chain, to mute. The only thing you've got to get the hang of is holding the right buttons to do stuff. I mean, I did talk to Acid Rain about the possibility of latching those buttons, and they said, yeah, it's a great idea. They haven't quite come up with an elegant way of implementing it, they say. So in some ways, because you hold something and then you can make as many things as you like, get applied to that, or that gets applied to it, and it works in all sorts of different directions, and that's really quite elegant and quite interesting. And if they were to introduce some kind of latch, then that would sort of fall away and not work quite so well. Similarly with a mute, you have to hold it. And sometimes, in the messing about, you can forget, and then you're not entirely sure, because now that I've pressed number 1, that's now selected, but it's still muted, if you see what I mean. And so it can potentially get annoying. But what I'll do is I'll plug it in to a few more things to see if I can create some kind of other thing. Yeah, give an example of modulating something and see if I can make that sound interesting. Would that be good? I think that might be good. Can I do it? I'm not so sure about that. But let's give it a go, shall we? Let's try my friend the Surface. So there you go, the Maestro from Acid Rain Technology. I could play on it all night. Absolutely all night. The muting in and out is absolute genius. It's something that I seem to have been missing, that I've never had in my rack before. I mean, I can mute out tracks. It's a muting of modulation that I find really exciting. Now I can do that with my Batumi if I route it through my Muton, and I can use it that way, but there you're combining a couple of different things. I want that for something else. Having it all in the one package is quite beautiful. I'm also often struggling to get my LFOs in time because I never seem to have the right clock to put it in the right place. And what am I doing with that anyway? I can never work out what the Batumi's doing in terms of putting a clock into it half the time. And so again, it draws those ideas and puts them into a single place where I can keep hold of it. I know what's going on. I know that it's going to be locked to tempo, and I can use it musically without having to worry about it. It's not a massive module. It's not packed full of features. It just has those interesting bits that are missing from elsewhere. And that's what really appeals to me about it. I mean, I would love there to be a knob or two. I don't know what it would do exactly. Maybe an attenuation knob. I mean, Acid Rain sell this Navigator attenuator, which is on a slider, sort of very high precision, and that could be an interesting addition to it. But otherwise, you're bound to have attenuators knocking around somewhere if you need them, or modules that already have that built in. So yeah, 6 channels of tempo locked LFOs that are easy to button in, that have multiple wave shapes that you can set up into a chain to do funny, wobbly, different things over time. Up to 32 waveforms you can program into that thing, and you can save and load up different chains whenever you like, instantly. You can have a whole set on a little SD card, stick that in, and then load up the bits that you need. Really interesting, really interesting. I mean, in my demonstration here, I haven't really used it for much more than filters, to be honest, because that's the most obvious place, I suppose. But if you have other devices that really like modulation, something like the Simulus, something like the Beads, which has just emerged, which I should be turning up tomorrow. This is the successor to the Clouds. There's a lot of modulation you can pop into that. Something like the Surface, you know, once I think about it deeper, combined with a data blender, you can really start to tease out and sculpt in modulatable ideas. It gets you thinking, that's for sure. So there you go, that's the Maestro. I hope that was useful in one way or another. And if this video has been helpful, then do like, subscribe, share it with your friends. Or if you're feeling really daring, come and join me on Patreon, throw me a couple of dollars and see what other videos I could produce. You just never know what might be around the corner. And in the meantime, go and make some tunes.